10,000 years ago, on the shore of a shallow lagoon in what's now northern Kenya, a small group of foragers is doing what foragers do every day: fishing, gathering, watching children play near the water. There is no warning. By the end of that day, at least 27 of them are dead. This is Nataruk, and when archaeologists uncovered it in 2012, they weren't just finding old bones. They were finding, depending on who you ask, either the oldest evidence of war in the human story or one of archaeology's most convincing false alarms. The site sits near Lake Turkana, in a landscape that 10,000 years ago was green and fertile, not the dry scrubland it is today. Researchers from Cambridge University found the remains of 27 individuals scattered across the old lagoon bed, 12 of them preserved well enough to examine closely. 10 of those 12 show signs of violence that are hard to explain any other way. Skulls fractured by blunt force, broken hands, ribs, knees, arrow wounds to the neck, 2 obsidian projectile points still lodged exactly where they struck, one in a skull, one in a chest cavity. The dead were not soldiers, they were men and women, at least 6 of them children, one a woman who was 6 to 9 months pregnant, her hands apparently bound before she died. This wasn't a fight between 2 warriors settling a score. It looked like an entire group had been hunted down together. One detail stood out immediately to the researchers. Obsidian, the glassy volcanic stone used for the projectile points, isn't naturally found anywhere near Nataruk. Whoever attacked this group had come from somewhere else, carrying weapons made somewhere else. That detail is why this single site reopened a much bigger argument. For decades, most anthropologists assumed organized group violence needed things hunter-gatherers didn't have yet: permanent settlements, stored surplus, private property, something worth killing over. War, the thinking went, arrived alongside agriculture and cities, not before them. Nataruk predates farming in this part of Africa entirely. These were mobile foragers, living in small bands, moving with the seasons, owning almost nothing that couldn't be carried. If this really was one group attacking another, the capacity for something like organized war already existed tens of thousands of years before anyone built a wall, a granary, or a throne. Which is exactly where the story gets complicated, because not every researcher who has studied Nataruk agrees on what they're looking at. A team from Arizona State University re-examined the same skeletons and reached a very different conclusion. They argue the skull fractures don't match the radiating cracks you'd expect from a direct blow. Instead, they show a grid-like pattern more consistent with the slow pressure of sediment settling over a body for thousands of years. Geology, not a weapon. They also point to something stranger in the dating itself. Radiocarbon results suggest the bodies at Nataruk may not all have died at the same time, some possibly centuries apart. If that holds up, Nataruk isn't the scene of a single massacre at all. It's a burial ground reused across generations by people whose funeral customs simply didn't include digging a hole. One researcher put the doubt bluntly: how does a bound pregnant woman die sitting upright and stay in that exact position long enough to be slowly buried by sediment, undisturbed by scavengers or decomposition first? That's a very specific, very lucky sequence of events for a battlefield to leave behind. So which is it? The oldest known war or a misread cemetery?
A decade after the discovery, researchers still haven't fully agreed, and they may never fully agree. The physical evidence is real. The interpretation is where the argument actually lives. But notice what the disagreement is really about. Almost nobody disputes that 10 of 12 people at that lagoon died by violence. The argument is about intent, about organization, about whether this was one group deliberately attacking another, which is really an argument about where an ordinary fight ends and a war begins. That line has never been obvious. A war needs at least two organized sides. It needs intent that outlasts a single moment of rage or panic. Somewhere between one person killing another and two nations mobilizing armies, there's a threshold, and nobody has ever agreed exactly where it sits. What both sides of the Nataruk argument quietly agree on is more unsettling than either conclusion alone. Long before cities, before agriculture, before anyone had a reason tied to property or empire, human groups were already physically capable of turning on each other with coordinated, lethal violence. Chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, do something strikingly similar. Small coalitions of males patrolling territory, sometimes killing members of neighboring groups in ambush-style raids that look almost planned. If the capacity sits that deep in our shared ancestry, the seeds of organized violence may be older than our species itself. Whatever really happened on that lagoon shore 10,000 years ago, it sits at the exact point where physical evidence and theoretical argument collide head-on. A case study in how hard it is to reconstruct humanity's first war from nothing but broken bone. Every war since has left a clearer trail, written records, named battles, counted dead. But somewhere before all of that, in a moment we can only partly reconstruct, the pattern had apparently already started. A lagoon, an ordinary day, then 27 people doing nothing unusual are gone. 10,000 years later, we're still arguing about what to call it, but we already suspect the pattern didn't start with them. It might just be the oldest place we can still see it.